Welcome to today's Daily Tune-In. I'm Vidette Mayer. I want to first start by saying, in this moment that I'm recording this Daily Tune-In, the energies coming in are potent. They are strong. The reason why I say that is I have become quite intimate with these energies especially over this last year, but in the last 4 to 5 months, I've really tuned into them. And when I tune into them and then see what's happening on the Schumann or see what's happening in the magnetosphere, it helps me connect the dots and really start to understand them. So it's almost like when you have an intimate relationship with someone, you get to know all their parts. You kind of get to know a little bit about their family and how they interact at their job and their friends, and you start to take all the parts of them and put it together to summarize the energy and the essence of who they are. That's what I've been doing with these energies because I'm extremely sensitive to them, and now studying them from the different aspects, even though sometimes these energies aren't necessarily showing up on the Schumann, or they're not necessarily showing me who they are on the magnetosphere. My body knows them. I know when they're around, so to speak. And in this moment, as I was preparing to do this daily tune-in today, I could feel the jolts literally of electricity coming into my body. I've been drinking a lot of water because that helps to anchor these energies in and also flush out toxins that are being jarred loose. The other thing is I had probably for the last 36 hours a pressure headache. It didn't go to migraine level, but it was a pressure headache. Again, just feeling like it was just a vice grip of my head. And it had happened majority of last night as I was sleeping. And I sit with it. I have conversations with this energy, and I get to know it. And this is when I really get the downloads for these daily tune-ins, because I then really get intimate with what is this process that I'm in right now? Why is it in my head? What are these energies bringing in? So a lot of what I'm going to share with you in the message today is what has been downloaded, so to speak, from these energies. But first, I want to show you what's going on in the space weather tools, because there's been a lot that shows us what's happening on the tools. So I want to pull that part and that aspect of these energies in so you can see them too, okay? So let's get to that. All right, let's start out with the Schumann, which is where I usually go first. And as you can see, it's been a really active couple of days. You see all of this energy right here that was coming in on the 2nd. This is really interesting that there is this blackout time. I did post about this on Instagram and Telegram, but this is an interesting 7 or 8 hours where either the Schumann went down, or I always keep the possibility open that it is taken down, so that we can't really see the evidence of how big this blast was. But we know that there has been quite a few solar flares as well as CMEs that have been emitted from the sun, and that's a lot of what's coming in here. So we have gotten some really big updates, as well as some really big intensive energy towards, again, these lower densities within ourselves emotionally and physically, which also then goes out into the outer world. Every single person, every single being, every single consciousness is going through the same process. So there's going to be a lot of projection, which I'm going to talk about in the message today, a lot of projection of these lower densities out in the world. Right here, I don't know what happened, which is why I think sometimes it is taken down, so we can't have confirmation. But you see how intense and how dense this blast is here, and it was starting to go pretty deep down into those super conscious levels of us, all the way down to those high soul frequencies. These are massive updates to our consciousness. The other thing I want to show that I think is really interesting, and I did one of the daily tune-ins from last week had something about I mentioned how some of these look like Morse code. And I was doing some research last night on Morse code and was looking at, see how these right here are the dots. This is coming down now into the super conscious frequencies of consciousness, whether it's human consciousness, of animal consciousness, of our planet's consciousness. So every living, breathing consciousness is getting these same solar energies. But these right here, because they were dots, I was looking at and comparing, and I haven't come to any conclusions yet, but it's just a study that I'm doing of the Morse code, and I was looking at the numbers in the Morse code and matching them up to some of these dots and the longer, I call them beats. I don't know what exactly it's called, but this to me came in as I was shown the Morse code. These are numbers, where, as we know, programming is done in numbers. The mathematics is kind of the foundational level of our universe. Everything comes down to numbers. So this, I believe, here is a massive reprogramming of our consciousness, of Mother Earth's consciousness, Gaia's consciousness, of every consciousness that's out there. So even structures, organizations have a living consciousness. You know, those businesses that you love to go into, those organizations that you like to do business with, because they have a consciousness that feels like it's supportive of you. And then we have our systems and our structures and some governmental organizations that are on those lower frequencies, and they just feel as if they're self-serving, and they too are getting massive hits of new programming, so to speak, energetic programming, which is then shining light on a lot of the lower frequencies up here. So again, I'm going to take this into the message, but I just want to keep this in your mind as we go through the message. So let's look at the magnetosphere here now, and you can see again we have pressure all around. This is the pressure part of the pressure readings of these energies around our planet, and you can see, no matter both perspectives that we have, it is all around us. And I believe that as I was looking at this last night, I understood it. I could feel these pressures, and I could feel the pressure in my consciousness, in those higher chakra realms, the crown chakra, my third eye, that headache feeling that I had, I know was because of this and because of those updates that we were getting. And then one last thing I want to show you. This is the looking at the sun. And on the second or third here, you'll see exactly, we've got some more CMEs that were released, right? There's another one and another one. So these aren't all earth-facing, but we will still get the residual effects of those coronal mass injections here in the next day or two. So again, these energies are here. So I can keep saying, I'm going to keep saying, big energies are coming in, but I wanted you to see these so that you can understand why it's just a constant influx, because not only are we getting it from the sun, but you'll see we're getting a lot of it coming in from this galactic side, which is where we tend to not typically get them, but it's because of our orbit, and it's also because of the help that we're getting to put all of this pressure on our planet to unveil or reveal all of the densities that have created the structures and the systems of our modern world, so that we can then break them down and rebuild them in the highest and best good of all. So let's get into the message today now. So now that you see what's going on in our energetic atmosphere, let's take a look at how that's going to affect us. So I like to do these daily tune-ins as like a daily thing. What do we have to pay attention to today? And today's message will certainly go towards that. But this is going to be something, today's message, as I was, kind of journaling it out and getting some thoughts out, this is going to be kind of more of a longer term expectation, because we are just now getting started with these really, really intense, the solar, the frequencies. So not only frequency as far as the intensity of the energy, but also frequency as timing. There's going to be more and more of these. We are just now starting the solar cycle, but it is predicted to be a pretty active solar cycle, and we're seeing it. And also what we know energetically about what is happening in the ascension process of our planet. We need these solar energies plus these galactic energies to bring in this transformation on a more intense, and I don't want to say faster because it kind of puts an expectation of what that means and how long. We can't really say that, because how we in our consciousness individually and then collectively, how we come together in consciousness to navigate this transformation determines the speed at which we kind of get through everything. So what are we talking about? I talked about yesterday on the Daily Tune-In about the transformational process, and how for each of us, we can choose to either consciously choose a transformation when we recognize that there is something misaligned or out of balance for us, or otherwise nature will do it for us. Nature will catalyze something, it'll trigger something within us that will force us to see what we didn't really want to look at, but maybe emotionally we kind of felt, but we were afraid to go there. We were afraid to actually bring it into the light. So nature will do that for us so that we then have to deal with it. So we know that our planet is in a transformational time. So nature is going to take its course whether we choose it or not. It's already going to happen. The first stage, the second stage, the first stage of transformation is the catalyst, is the trigger. The second stage is the dissolution part. The dissolution comes after something is triggered, after a transformation is triggered, and then you have to burn everything down, so to speak. In alchemy, it's burning the substance down to its all of its particles, down to ash, okay? So that phase is going to start happening, or it's already actually been happening, but we're going to start to see it more obviously in our planetary environment, but also in our own lives. So what came through is the unspeakable is going to surface. So that's, today, but also as we go in these next few weeks, through almost the end of the year, we are going to be seeing the unspeakable. Now, nothing that I share with you needs to be feared. This is not to instill fear. It's instilling knowledge, and how we navigate transformation is by having the knowledge of what the process is, which I'm sharing with you here, so it doesn't become something to fear. It becomes something to navigate. We're going to talk a little bit about that here when we get to the emotional part of this. But spiritually, we have got to see the unspeakable, the things that we haven't wanted to speak about in our lives, the things that we didn't even want to hear ourselves say. So yesterday I shared my own transformation that was unconscious when I, all those years ago when I walked in on my first husband with another woman. What I was afraid to hear myself speak eventually in that transformation was, I'm ready to leave this marriage. It was so hard for me to hear myself say, and the first time I heard myself say it to him in the line of, I think we have to get divorced. It was years later. I was so afraid to speak the unspeakable because that made it so, right? So I disillusioned myself for so long in there, from the trigger to the actual movement of the transformation, There was a span of years because I was so afraid to speak the unspeakable. I was afraid to see it. And yet, transformation calls us to do it. Now I will never go years in between a catalyst and actually making the first move, because I understand transformation now and I consciously choose it. And I share that with you because so that you don't have to fear the unspeakable. You're going to see it coming up in your life. All of those lower densities that we've been talking about, and seeing those energetic lower densities being worked out in you and in our collective and in our planet on all the different perspectives, all of that has got to be dealt with. And you're going to have to start to speak the unspeakable, and you're going to have to start to see it. So whether you choose it or whether nature takes its course and triggers a transformation in that so that you have to see it and have to speak it, the choice is yours. But the unspeakable is what is now being triggered. And we're going to see it in our world. We're going to see some unspeakable things that we cannot even believe was happening. And yet, that takes us into the emotional part of us. The emotional part of us this is the phase where everything is ever changing. So the unspeakable, when it hits, when you finally see it, when you finally recognize it, when you finally speak it into existence and you say, okay, this is what I have to transform, that's an ever-changing thing. So although it might bring up deep sadness, maybe some anger, not some, it'll probably bring up anger. All of that stuff will be triggered, but understand that emotional waves come and go. It's not the truth of your existence. What we avoid in transformation is the fact that we're afraid to speak it, we're afraid to see it, because we're afraid that it'll be the feeling that we feel for so long. But that's not at all the truth. The truth of transformation is literally, it's a wave. It comes and it goes. It ebbs and it flows. So when you see and speak the unspeakable, and you feel the rage or the anger or the sadness or this fear, whatever it is, and you sit, this is what we're talking about with processing the densities. You sit in it and you feel it and you allow it to have its way with you, and then you move it into the wormholing effect. I did a video on it on Instagram and Telegram last week about taking the thing, whatever is limiting you, whatever is leaving you in grief, and once you've identified it and once you've sat with it and you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm done with this, but how do I pull myself out? You start to go to the opposite expression. What is it you want to create from this transformation? What is it you want to create from this grief or this anger? What is it that you would intend to move this from here to into? What do you want to expand into? And put then your energy into the intention of how you want to feel and be on the other side of this. This is how you ebb and flow in the transformation as you're bringing forth the healing of what is unspeakable at this point. You wormhole from where you are into a higher existence by putting yourself in the intention of where you want to be. And you stay there in that, and you bring that energy into it, which is expansive energy that pulls you into that life expansive joy and love and anticipation of what you're creating from this transformation. So how this is going to look in the physical world as you bring the unspeakable into your reality and as you invite it in and you ebb and flow with everything that starts to bring as the dissolution piece of it starts to happen. This is when all pieces of it will start to unveil themselves, reveal themselves. In the physical, you will see more of the systems of our world, the structures. As more of the unspeakable bubbles up, there's going to be the sadness, and And this is where you make your life a moving prayer. This is a beautiful part of this message. Is the prayer, whatever it means to you. It doesn't have to be the traditional sense of prayer. It is for me. That's how I do it. However, a moving prayer is always being in the expectation of what's being created. Allow what's being created to pull you forward into the next moment and into the next moment. And if there's a moment where you're overcome with grief or you're overcome with sadness because what you see just hurts, and what you're realizing, what you're understanding more about something in your life that you didn't want to look at, but now you realize what it's about and it hurts, you sit in that moment and for the next few moments, and then you get to the point where you breathe it through. It starts to subside. This is where you have to learn. Not that you have to, but this is where you have the opportunity to learn about surrender and what it really means just to go into a ball and just lose yourself in the feeling of the grief or the sadness. And then it gets easier because you'll feel when it just subsides enough where you say, okay, that layer is done. Where do I want to take myself from this place? Rather than staying in it to be the victim of it, this is where the transformational process asks you to pull yourself into, what is it I'm transforming into in this area of my life that it used to be unspeakable, but now it's not. This is a beautiful, beautiful process when you allow it to unfold. And I know it's not normal, it hasn't been taught, but if this is the process that this whole entire planet is going through at this time, and we're going to see more and more of the unspeakable come into our vision and come into our hearts, because these energies that are coming in are here to stay. The space weather reports are not going to change whether we see it on the Schumann or not. These are the energies that are pulling us into these higher frequencies. We cannot resist them because they are not going away. We are not going back to the old dense world that we lived in. We are actually, where we're wormholing into is a higher frequency of our planetary vibration, which means a higher frequency of our planetary existence, which means that then manifests into a higher manifestation of our lives, and with more abundance and with more creativity, with more joy, with more love and meaning and purpose. And yet when those times come where there is density, we have understanding now of how we maneuver through those densities so we don't lose the expansiveness of our lives, our expansiveness of our existence, because we understand that the lower densities are always a part of the evolution of our souls. We have to be in this process now. It's who we are. So learning it now rather than resisting it is going to make what we see manifesting in our world a lot less fear-based, a lot less scary, a lot less heartbreaking. We can feel the heartbreak, but we've got to allow ourselves to be pulled through with where we're going in this ascension process. And it is to a better and higher level of existence. When we keep our eye on that, when we keep our heart set on that, when we keep ourselves stepping forward and being pulled forward towards that, this transformational process becomes a lot easier to navigate. So allow these unspeakable truths to come in, to be seen, because they're being disrupted everywhere. It's part of what this is all about. Do not fear it, embrace it, surrender to it, and allow all of us as a whole collective to be pulled forward. This is a beautiful time. I know I say it every single daily tune-in, but it really is. When I speak about it here on these daily tune-ins, I'm reminded that it is a really beautiful time because we're being taught something we've never been taught. And I know from my own personal experience with transforming in all kinds of different ways, almost every aspect of my life has had to be transformed because it was all built on such false pretenses, quite frankly. and having to bring them all into a higher state of being has been one of the hardest jobs I've ever had, and it's taken me years. But at the same time, I understand this process now. I understand how we become more and more of who we want to be. We become more and more of a person that is worth us knowing. You said that yesterday on yesterday's Daily Tune-In. I know where this process goes. That's why it's so beautiful that the whole planet is having to go through it. But I also understand the pain of actually having to face some unspeakable truths too. So I'm here to help you navigate those. If you need additional support, I am here for you as a professional, licensed and certified hypnotherapist, as well as a holistic healer. I'm here for you as somebody who's been through this process personally several times, and I bring those two pieces of expertise together and help you and help others guide themselves through. I just support you understanding how to guide yourself. I show you how to do it, and you do it. So allow me to support you if you need some additional support, because I understand this process isn't easy, but you have to go through it. There's no choice at this point. Thank you for being here on today's Daily Tune-In. I look forward to hearing your comments, because I'm getting a lot of them, and I'm getting some really great DMs and questions emailed to me through Instagram. So if you have anything that you would like to have us tune into, please send them through social media, and I'd be more than happy to address them here on a future Daily Tune-In. I'll see you on tomorrow's Daily Tune-In. Mwah. Bye. If today's Daily Tune-In brought you value and insight, please consider giving in return for that value by leaving a love offering. All donations go to keeping this platform operating and in service to humanity during these transformational times. To go even deeper into your soul frequency, please consider these offerings. For personal insights into your most pressing questions and concerns, get an energetic insight reading delivered directly to your inbox. To take a quantum leap in your transformation, book a personal session with Vedette. There are several options available based on how deeply you would like to go into your most desired soul-led life. To find more information and to book your sessions, please visit VedetteMayer.com.